Hey, it's Jorge from Brew Beer and Drink It, and today I want to show you guys how to adjust your brewing water. I've been getting a lot of questions about how I go about adjusting my water, and people want to know how they can adjust their own water. And unfortunately, there's no simple answer to this. It really varies on your source of water and the type of beer that you're going to be brewing. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how I go about adjusting your water. Now, to figure this out, I usually use software, and I'm actually at the point where I know my water and my recipes pretty well, where I don't really need to use brewing software. So in order to show you this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a Excel spreadsheet that I found, which I think is probably going to be the best way to kind of give an example, and that way you guys can follow along without having to go out and buy any kind of brewing software. So all you have to do is basically go to this website called ecwatercalculator.com, and you can go ahead and download an Excel spreadsheet. It's free, so just click download and boom, there you go. That's all you need. So you can follow along with this and know that you can do the same calculations with other brewing software, which are probably a little bit more sophisticated, but this Excel spreadsheet is pretty damn good, so you can go ahead and use this if you want as well. So basically, it kind of walks you through what you need to do. If you want to start out with your water profile, you just enter any information that you have in there. You enter your grain information, and then it starts to calculate pretty much everything else down here. So I'm going to start out with the example of how I go about this. I use distilled water, or actually reverse osmosis, which is essentially the same thing, has no minerals, no nothing. And let's say that I'm going to be brewing something like a Munich Helle. So we'll do about, I don't know, 8¾ pounds of Pilsner, and say we do about, I don't know, quarter pound of Munich, 0.4 pounds of Vienna malt. So once I enter all of that, it should start calculating, but you need to enter how much water you're going to use for your mash. So say you use about, I don't know, 4 gallons and 6, well, I'd say more like 7 probably for this. And then it calculates, basically it estimates the pH that you're going to expect during the mash. Now this does it at room temperature. I usually measure at mash temperature, which is a little bit lower, 5.1 to 5.4. And then just looking at this, then I can come down and see if I need to adjust my pH down or up. In this case, since I'm above the pH that I want to be, I'm just going to do the pH down section. So in this case, I'll probably be adding about 4 grams of gypsum, which is about a teaspoon, and then I don't know, maybe about 6 grams of calcium chloride, and that will put me right around the range. But then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with water. So I mean, if you want to like even up the calcium chloride to maybe enhance the maltiness a little bit, you can do that. This is a recipe for Munich Helles, and Munich Helles is supposed to be brewed with slightly carbonate water. So I mean, if you really wanted to, you can try to figure out how much, if you want to add a little bit of carbonate to your water, but that's going to start putting you above the pH range, so you're going to have to just start messing around with this. And you can do all that if you want. You don't really need to get that crazy with it. You can just focus on getting the pH down and your chloride to sulfate ratio. So let's say that you were to start out with water from somewhere else that does actually have minerals, unlike distilled or reverse osmosis water. You can go in here and basically input any minerals that you have. So if I'm going to use a water profile from Munich, which has 75 of calcium, 20 of magnesium, 10 of sodium, and then let's see, chloride is about 2, sulfate is about 10, and bicarbonate's about 200. Now this also gives you the option to choose whether you have your alkalinity stated as calcium carbonate or bicarbonate. So you just check whichever one you have in here. Now, if you start out with this water and you have the same recipe, use the same amount of water, you can come down here. Even with the salt additions, you're going to notice that your pH is actually higher. So at this point, if you have this kind of water, your adjustment has to basically make up for the starting minerals which you have in your water. So you can either go in here and add more salts, but really if you're adding more than a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of these, you're starting to add a little bit too much. And one thing they have to take into account is that minerals do give water a little bit of a flavor. If you ever buy bottled water, you can notice in the label it says that minerals have been added for flavor. So Munich Helles can be brewed with either soft or hard water. In this case, we're already at 279 ppm of calcium, and I actually usually don't adjust my sparge water, and that's because I use reverse osmosis. But even if I don't adjust, I'm still kind of like a little bit high here. Well, this is because I'm using 75 ppm as a starting, but if I didn't, then I'll probably have closer to about I don't know, 50. Let's see if I do that 0. Yeah, I'll be at like 74, so that's not too bad. So in this case, you could, if you really wanted to, you can just add more brewing salts, or you can start doing things like adding maybe acidulated malt. So you can add maybe, I don't know, 1.5 ounces of it to the mash, and that will bring the pH down to 559 and put you right around that range. Or what you could do is you could basically get rid of some of the alkalinity in your water. So you can do that either by boiling or diluting your water with something like distilled water. Easiest way is probably to dilute it with distilled water. If you were to take this and add, use half of your tap water and half of distilled water, then basically your numbers just, become half of that. So in this case, this will be 37, half of calcium. You'll have about 10 of magnesium, 5 of sodium, 1 of calcium chloride or chloride, 5 ppm of sulfate, and about 100 of bicarbonate. So this basically brings it a little bit closer. So you may have to add just slightly more. You don't have to add a whole lot more brewing salts whenever you dilute your water. So those are some of the ways that you can go about doing all of this. Now let's give another example here. So let's say that instead of brewing a Munich Helles, which is a light beer, let's say that I'm gonna brew something like a Munich Dunkel or Munich dark beer. So in this case, I wouldn't be using Pilsner malt. I'll be using pretty much nothing but Munich malt, and then maybe I don't know, let's see, I'll probably add Carafa Special, so at about, I don't know, 0.4 pounds. So I can come in and let me get rid of all of the stuff that we did here. So if you notice, if you were to use a recipe for a Munich Dunkel and start out with water from Munich from Germany, you basically don't even need to do any kind of water adjustments, and that's because the water is basically well suited for that beer. Now in this case, the only thing that you're gonna have to worry about is whether or not you want to enhance your maltiness or your bitterness, but the water is basically well suited for this kind of beer. If you wanted to enhance the maltiness in this beer, then you can basically come in and add, I don't know, maybe a gram of calcium chloride, and you know, you'll still be well within your levels of your minerals, and you know, have slightly maltier beer. Your pH will still be good, but you don't really need to adjust your water much for this recipe using this starting water. Now, if I were to try to brew this darker beer with, I don't know, distilled water, or maybe if I happen to make it to the NHC this year and I happen to brew with one of my friends from Seattle or wherever, you know, their water out there is a softer water, has about 17 ppm of calcium, 1 of magnesium, 4 of sodium, chloride is about 4, sulfate's about 2, and alkalinity as calcium carbonate is about 15. So in this case, the pH is probably just within range. Now the only problem here is that calcium is probably going to be a little too low, because you always want to have at least about 50 ppm of calcium. That's going to be needed mostly for fermentation. It helps a lot during your mashing, but it's going to be mostly for fermentation. So you still want to come in and add a little bit of calcium. Now the problem here is if you start adding calcium, say you add about a teaspoon of calcium to bring your calcium up, your pH is going to go down and it's going to put you below that range where you want to be. So you probably are better off adding something like chalk. That will add a little bit of calcium, and it will also add carbonates to your water. So you can probably be fine just adding, I don't know, about 4 grams of chalk. And then again, if you wanted to, you can play around to get any kind of chloride to sulfate ratio here, but you really don't need to adjust your water that much. You know, I focus mostly on your pH, and that's pretty much how I go about, you know, adjusting water. You either adjust your pH down by adding calcium or magnesium, or you adjust your pH up by adding carbonates. I've never really used slake lime. I don't really like using lactic acid, but I know a lot of brewers who use those and they get really good results. Since I brew with reverse osmosis water, my adjustments are pretty simple. But that's pretty much how you go about adjusting your water. So I hope that this helps you figure out. And again, this Excel spreadsheet is put out by this guy named that goes by the handle of TH. So you know, if you want to use this Excel spreadsheet, you know, donate to this Excel spreadsheet. This Excel spreadsheet has evolved quite a bit from when I first came across. And you know, if anything, you know, at least head on over to his Homebrew Talk profile and, you know, at least thank him or something. I don't know. Anyways, hope that this helps, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.